kids to a Ramadan story time. Thank you for watching our stories every day. Before we begin today's story, I'd like to ask you a question. How many animals can you mention that were named in the Holy Quran? Let's think about that for a while. Elephants, there's Surah Al-Fil. Bees, there's a surah called Surah Al-Nahl. Ants, there's a surah called Surah Al-Naml. A wolf is mentioned in Surah Yusuf and in the story of Prophet Yusuf. A snake, the snake that was mentioned in the miracle of Prophet Musa alayhi salam. It was mentioned in a couple places in the Quran. Our story today is an Arabian tale that's based on a true story. In the Arabian town of Sham or Damascus. It happened a couple hundred years ago. There was once a really good believer, a very good mu'min. His name was Abdullah, and he was known in his town for his generosity, for his kindness. He always gave to the orphans, he gave to the poor. He would feed anyone in need, help out anyone in need. He was good and kind to his neighbors, to his family, to the people at the masjid. He truly had a kind and merciful heart. And his neighbor, his right next door neighbor, his name was Ahmed. And he was very good to his neighbor. Like anytime that his family, that Abdullah's family would be cooking like this famous dish, like lentil soup and all this yummy food. So he would think, my neighbor is going to smell the food that I'm cooking, let's serve them. So he would split his meal in half and send over some food to Ahmed's house. Ahmed was also a very good man. What happened to Ahmed one day is that he decided to enter this business project, and he put all his money into this business project, and subhanallah, it failed. He lost everything. All of his life savings were gone. He came home to his wife, discussing the matters together, what to do. And Ahmed didn't feel good asking for favors. It's kind of hard to go around like asking people. And so he decided, him and his wife together, I'm not going to go around like begging for money or asking for help. I'll see what kind of savings or what kind of treasures I have. I'll try to sell what I can sell and I'll live on that money. And subhanallah, he was too shy to just knock on the door of his next door neighbor and tell Abdullah, I'm in a rough spot, my neighbor. Can you help me out with some money? He was too shy, too proud, we can say. If Abdullah knew the difficulty that Ahmed was going through and that he really needed some money, I'm sure Abdullah would not hesitate for a second and would help his neighbor out. But subhanallah, he had no idea what Ahmed was going through. So Ahmed and his wife decided, we'll sell our house. With the money we get from selling our house, we can buy a smaller house, let's say, in that money and live off of the rest for a while until I figure out a new business project to work on. Now, back in those days, there were no newspapers or emails to send out like advertisements that, oh, house for sale. So what they would do in those days is they would walk in the busy market and they would just call out. I mean, that's the way to say, my house is for sale. Who would like to buy my house? Ahmed was calling out house for sale. Some people gathered around him and they asked, well, okay, Ahmed, you're selling your house. How much are you asking for it? Ahmed thought for a while. He said, I'm asking 20,000 dinars for it. So 20,000 dinar. Some of the men gathered around him. One person seemed interested, and he said, "Okay, Ahmed, let me walk over with you to your house, kind of inspect it, check it out. I want to see if 20,000 dinar is a fair price." So they walked over together, and this man is smart. He's a good businessman, and he studies like houses and how much they're worth. So he noticed that the street was not like the most fancy, luxurious neighborhood in Damascus. It was like a basic, simple neighborhood, okay, clean, but not amazing. He stepped into Ahmed's house, and then he told Ahmed, "Ahmed, your house is really small. 20,000 is unfair. In fact, half of that, even 10,000. Listen, no one's gonna buy your house for 20,000. If you're lucky, you'll find someone to buy it for 10,000, half of what you're asking. Come on, be realistic." Now it was Ahmed's turn to argue with this smart businessman. He said, "You know what? The 20,000 dinar, it's not for the house itself. It's not for the walls. It's not for the floor and the rug and the cement. It's for the neighbor. If you only knew my neighbor. Whoever buys this house is going to be so lucky to have the best neighbor in the entire city of Damascus. This neighbor, Abdullah, whenever I'm sick, he comes over and visits me. When I'm happy, he's happy for me and he comes and celebrates with me. When I'm sad, he's sad. He feels for me. He listens to my problems. There isn't a day that he cooks like a huge feast, except that he'll split the meal in half and send over some of his meal to us. He buys fresh fruits. He shares his fruit basket with us. Not once did I ever hear him or his children bother us or bang or be noisy or disruptive. Whoever is buying this house is buying the best neighbor." Who happens to overhear this whole conversation? Abdullah. He wasn't intentionally trying to listen, but they live wall to wall. He heard the whole conversation. Abdullah quickly gets dressed and goes over to his neighbor's house and knocks on the door. Ahmed opens. "Welcome, my dear neighbor. Come in." Abdullah says, "Well, I couldn't help but to overhear that you're trying to sell your house and you're asking for 20,000 dinar. Ahmed, my neighbor, my brother, my friend, why are you selling your house?" I'm just in need of a couple hundred dinars here and there. I figured I'll move into another neighborhood. Nothing for you to worry about." Abdullah thinks for a couple moments and he says, "You know what? I kind of need your house. I can plan that if I buy your house for 20,000 dinar, I can expand my own house and I can make my house bigger. You are asking for 20,000 dinar? 20,000 dinar it is. And here's your money in full. No need to argue with these businessmen anymore. Here's your 20,000 dinar." Abdullah leaves the house. The businessman is astonished. "Wow, Ahmed, you got really lucky. You struck a great deal. 20,000 dinar for your simple house?" Ahmed and his wife, they had mixed feelings. They were sad to leave this home that they spent so many years together. They had so many good and bad memories, mostly good though. They were happy that their financial problem was solved. They began packing. And he was also happy and grateful to his neighbor who once again helped him when he was in need. They were packing together, collecting their things. Then they heard a knock at the door. Ahmed gets up and goes to the door. It's his neighbor, Abdullah. Abdullah steps into Ahmed's house. He says, Assalamu alaikum. He looks around. Hey, what's going on? What are you guys doing? Ahmed said, well, we're packing, of course, remember? We just sold our house. Abdullah says, Ahmed, stop what you're doing. Stop packing. There's no need to move. I paid for this house in full. And I get to decide what to do with this house. And this house is my gift to you, Ahmed. You're my neighbor. You're my good neighbor. You've been a good neighbor all these years. The house is yours. The money I paid yesterday is also yours. Fair and square. Ahmed couldn't help himself. He was so happy. He gave Abdullah a huge hug. And he rushed outside. He bought the most delicious, tastiest sweets that they make in Damascus. And he brought it over to Abdullah. And subhanallah, from then on, the story of Ahmed and Abdullah, these two amazing, loving, caring, supportive neighbors, became the story on every family's tongue.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. I have some questions for the kids here with me and for all of you kids at home too. Okay, do you know that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he taught us to be very kind to our neighbors?
Of course.
Yeah. So I'd like you to share with me something that you have done, something that is kind, something that is good, that you have done for your neighbors.
Yeah, a long time ago, when our neighbor's husband died, I remember we would go to her house and try to comfort her and just make her feel happier and maybe not so overwhelmed by what happened.
It was a very difficult time for her. Yes. Well, tell me, are you thankful that Allah has given you some good neighbors? Like, what are some kind gestures that your neighbors have done for you and your family?
I do remember we had this one neighbor. Whenever we would go to her house, she would be so sweet to us. She would give us gifts just out of nowhere. She would let us play with her cat. She would give us desserts and sweets for us to take home with us sometimes. She was very sweet to us.
Yes, mashallah. I thank all of our neighbors. And I'd like all you kids at home to share with us some good things that you're doing for your neighbors. And what are some kind things that your neighbors have done for you? And we'll say for now,
Assalamu alaikum.